Well, good morning, everyone.
Hello, Scott.
Goedemorgen. Selamat pagi. Welcome to our time together to remember and celebrate Beppie Boudens Alexander. My name is Scott Parker. I think I've met most of you this morning, if I didn't already know you. I am one of the son-in-laws that has had the privilege of marrying into the family and being part of this family. And as I learned, and Dave and Al have also learned, the sons-in-laws, Beppie and Peter were never shy about putting us to work. So here I am. To help with today's gathering of family, friends, and neighbors from near and far. And I'd also like to acknowledge that we have a pretty large contingent watching our live stream. So welcome to them as well. The opening song that we were just listening to as people were sitting down is actually called Salamat Jalan Indish Kind, which is also on one of the flower arrangements here. That actually means farewell, Indo Child, and was requested by Beppie to be included today. As you'll hear more about today, music was very important to her, and in fact, near the end today, we'll ask you to be singing along, hence why there's some song sheets for you to refer to. Before we move on, just a few logistical items. First, if you haven't already, of course, please be sure to turn off any noise-making device that you might have with you. And second, at the conclusion of today's celebration, there will be a reception downstairs so that we can eat together and share more stories together. So please join us after that. Each of us, knew Beppie in a different way, and I think today is an opportunity to hear more from each other about her. So I'm not going to introduce the family all at once. I'm going to just introduce our speakers as they come up today. And so with that, I'll welcome our first speaker, who is the eldest daughter, Jackie Boudens.
I'm already regretting being volunteering to be the first one to speak, but anyway, I have notes. Jake. Thanks, Hildy. Okay, so I am going to, sadly, we're missing a couple of people that are actually key to this portion of the speech, but that's fine. I'm going to forge on ahead. So I'm going to begin with an observation on the power of friendship. So I'm going to mention names. And I'm going to inevitably forget someone, so I'm just going to apologize right now for that. Anyway, so we knew years before Pop died that Mom would be moving to Oshawa. She said to us, in the end, it's your family that's going to be there for you. And that drove her to move. And she knew she was going to move to Oshawa. I don't know why she picked Oshawa, but Oshawa is the place she was going to move to. Anyway, so just under 4 years after Peter died, she made the move, and that's a story for later down in the reception, because that was a whole crazy thing. There was this 81-year-old woman packing up a house that she'd lived in for 40 years. It was absolutely insane. Anyways, she did it. She moved to a brand new city where she essentially knew no one but us, and she was pretty optimistic about the move and her ability to make a new life here. And slowly but surely it started happening. She joined the senior center, she tried out Probus and briefly a weaving guild, and she discovered the Dutch Indonesian community west of Toronto. She really enjoyed drumming, ukulele, and the monthly trips to Warung Kopi for those yummy treats that she so loved. She missed really being involved with Cannes and our harbor, and I know some of you don't know who it is, but if there's anybody watching from Quebec right now, hi Hugh, you will know what I'm talking about. So she hung on to those things for quite a while despite the distance, but eventually, as time passed, she slowly let those go. And she did miss her Quebec friends, and the thing is, more and more, as time passed, she really missed feeling useful. And those of you who are retired will understand what that's about, because once you retire, you kind of say, well, what do I do with myself now? right? And there are times when you can be like a little bit unprepared for that. And I think Mom was not completely prepared for going from a life of tons of activity with Cansenauer Harbor to all of a sudden, essentially nothing, right? She did find it a little bit of a challenge fitting in here in Oshawa, a little bit more of a challenge than she had anticipated. And she really did struggle with finding a new purpose. I was honestly super happy that she moved because it was very convenient for me rather than the 5-hour drive down the 401 to visit her, and especially obviously in her later years when she needed a little bit more help. But I was worried, frankly, that the cost might have been too great for her to have made that move. And then you know what? That's when I saw the power of friendship at work. You, her friends, here in the room, in Quebec, overseas, you really sustained her. Her friends from Amis and Cans in Quebec who kept in touch with her and didn't let her go. Beatrice, Hugh, Robert, Peter, maybe both of you. There are multiple Peters and Peters because they're Dutch people. Harm, to name a few. Former students who had moved across the world like Pascal, who's now living in Indonesia, and brief sparks in her life like Petra, Marie-José, Marianne, who stayed long-distance friends. And the relatives, who were relatives but also friends, and the ones especially from more recent years, Tante Marianne, Tante Marlene, and our cousin Guus, who had really special bonds with Mom, again, especially in the later years. And of course, not to mention the old Chambly gang, which sadly has grown a lot smaller, but they kept in touch for even long after most of them had moved from the Chambly area. And new friends like Wayne, who she met at ukulele, and you'll be hearing from later as well. And last but not least, the people she felt most at home with here, the Samara Lunch Club from Mississauga, Tineke, Rein, Johan, Paul, Mans, and Hina. You know, I look with wonder at the connections she made in her life and the friendships she maintained. I spoke with Mom almost every day for the last 10 years and heard all about your phone calls, your emails, your cards, and your visits. And frankly, I know way too much about most of you. But every interaction and communication was important to her. If you've ever wondered, friends, what you meant to Beppie and if you made a difference in your life, I can tell you unequivocally that you were a very large part of what made her happy. You and delicious food, of course. I will be forever grateful for you for that. Okay, so now I'm going to take a few minutes to speak to the mother directly. And for those of you who know her, I'm at a particular advantage right now because she can't interrupt me. She can't object to what I'm saying, and she can't change the subject. All right, here I go. Hello, Mother. It's number 1. I love you lots, but you were wrong about some really important stuff. You were beautiful, and you were smart. And most importantly, you were a very good mother. All that talk that you did about being a bad mother was such doo-doo. I feel sad you felt that way and that nothing we seemed to say made you feel differently. What you gave us was more important than a page from Good Housekeeping. You may not have been a traditional mother, but you carved your own path, one that suited you and benefited us. That path showed me you loved me, supported me, and valued me. And above all, you were there for me during some of the most difficult parts of my life. Okay. Here comes the teary part. Hold on. Okay, I remember you sneaking into my room at night for many nights to check on me. I remember you fixing things at school so that I would actually graduate. I remember you driving all the way to Calgary to pick me up. I remember you knocking on my window in the middle of the night and sleeping with me on my living room floor. All the hard stuff where you probably didn't really know what to do, but where you showed up anyway. I blame you, however, completely for my dislike of cooking, cleaning, and laundry, but I'm glad you didn't lose yourself completely in what you perceived the role of a good mother should be. It made you so much more interesting. We broke each other's hearts more than a few times, but I'm grateful for the relationship we developed as adults. To the end, I knew you loved me, were proud of me, and worried about me way, way too much, as I heard frequently from my sisters, who you would tell that to. The last 10 years, you called me every evening to tell me you were alive, except when you forgot because you were watching YouTube, and then I would then call you in a panic, and you would say, "Oh, is it that late already?" Yes, Mother, I am as important as Jonas Kaufmann to you. Our daily connection, which was sometimes just for 60 seconds or sometimes 60 minutes, is now over. But I will never forget what you did for me, and I will never forget who you were as a human being. Love you, love you, love you, Mom. Sorry, RSP, I went over my time.
It'll be forgiven.
Well, because why stick to the script when you cannot?
Thank you, Jackie. Next, I would like to invite Maggie Boudens to speak. Maggie is the youngest daughter of Beppie, and she's going to share with us a message from the Netherlands.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here with us today. I am not going to speak for myself today because I have two wonderful sisters who are doing a much better job than I ever could, because I would just be all tears. So I'm reading a letter today from my cousin Guus. Dear family, friends, and acquaintances, this is a message from the Netherlands. I'm the son of Fie Boudens, the older sister of Peter Boudens, husband of Beppie. My name is Guus, just like their son, my cousin. As a child, I often visited my aunt and uncle in Rotterdam and in De Zwet. Uncle Piet was my godfather. He taught me to skate, to sail, and carpentry. I used to bring the laundry that had been delivered to my mother for cleaning, and I went there by bus or by bike. Aunt Bep helped me make a drawing one day for Mother's Day. Their children were still very young, but I was always welcome. It was really nice to be there. It was very difficult for me when they emigrated so far away. Canada. It seemed like a farewell forever. But it wasn't. Later, I visited them in Chambly and Oshawa, and the good contact that we used to have when I was young was there again immediately. In 2022 and 2024, I had special encounters with Aunt Bep in Oshawa. When she saw me after so many years, she said, "Oh, you haven't changed a bit," which is kind of funny because he'd be in his 70s. She told me about her childhood in Indonesia, about the years in Rotterdam and De Zwet, and about her later life. We had a very special bond. On June 25th this year, we talked all day. And in the evening, she drove me to a restaurant at the mall where we had chicken and ribs for dinner. At the station, we said goodbye. Bye, Guus, I hope you're doing well. Bye, Aunt Bep, take care, until next time. It was the last time we saw each other. She was already 92 and struggling with the impending loss of her independence. And on October 10th, she was no longer there. Again, it seems like a goodbye forever, but it is not. The good times we had together during my childhood, the wonderful reunions in the past and recent years, I will never forget. I'm grateful for our special relationship and for reconnecting with my three cousins, Jackie, Connie, and Maggie, and her brother Wim, who have all welcomed me warmly, just like Aunt Bep always has. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Maggie, and to Guus. Next, we have a neighbor, Jonathan Hosser, here from Oshawa to say a few words, so I'll just invite Jonathan up.
everybody. So I can tell that this is a very hard time for you all. Somebody who I hear is very kind, very heartwell, and she's no longer with us, so I just have this ode for her. Ode to Miss Beppie. Dearest Miss Beppie, such a quiet soul, always in her garden, enjoying the beauty she sowed. You are a model neighbor, not a bad thing to say. Only wish I knew more about you and how you spent your days. To those she left behind, may God's peace be yours. It's never easy to lose a loved one, especially such a sweet soul. Remember, life is but a stopping place, a pause in what's to be, a resting place along the road to sweet eternity. We all have different journeys, different paths along the way. We were all meant to learn some things, but never meant to stay. Miss Beppie taught us some lessons about unconditional love. We saw the way her family stuck to her like gloves. In this life, our destination is a place far greater than we know. For some, the journey's quicker, and for some, the journey's slow. And when the journey finally ends, we'll claim a great reward and find everlasting peace together with the Lord. Without the hope that time will send, a peace that only God can lend, may strength be yours and faith restore until you meet her once more. May her soul rest in sweet peace and light perpetually shines on her. I thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. Joining us now is Vim Alexander, Beppie's younger brother.
It's a surprise. I didn't know when it would have been my turn. So I'll have to have a look at my spying thing. Beppie was my sissy. Bep was my sister. We called her Bep after we judged that she had grown up. Our father was 28 years old and our mother was 22 when they got their first child, a daughter, and they decided that they would give her an elegant name, Elizabeth. My father went to town hall to have her registered, but suddenly in front of the official, he didn't remember. So the only thing he could say, we call her Beppie. So the official wrote dutifully down, family name Alexander, given name Beppie. And that was it. Our father was a supervising engineer in construction of bridges for the national railways. That meant that we had to move quite often. It was in the 20 years after our parents' marriage, they moved more than 30 times in Indonesia. And when Beppie was born, he was located in the north, far north of Sumatra. And when she was 2, they had to move back to Java. They traveled by boat, and the second child, Rob, was born on the boat in the middle of the Java Sea. I came 7 years later, So the mathematicians among us will immediately know that Beppie and I differ 9 years in age. That's quite a gap for children. It meant, in fact, that we lived in two quite separate worlds, and that there was a gap in our experience of those times in Indonesia, Dutch East Indies, I should say. That is, for example, the way that we experienced the war. I was born just before the Japanese marched in. Beppie later on said that, well, nothing really serious happened to us, which was true, but I found that in the course of my life, the war has had very strong influence on me. In fact, the gap between us stayed. So the question that arose in my mind thinking about this speech was what brought us together? In fact, what it did was being of the same family. So we had the same things that we experienced in so far. And we had the same look at life. And that was it, in fact. But later on, much later on, when we had grown older and had children, etc., we concluded that what brought us together was also being an Indo. Indo is short for Indo-European, which means that we're a kind of a mixture. And the Indo population has certain characteristics that are mentioned, and I think I ought to tell you what characteristics there are. And I think I ought to tell you what the causes of some characteristics. Some are brought about by the position of the Indo people in the Dutch East Indies community. There were layers. In fact, it was a hierarchically layered society. On top were the Europeans and behind, under them, the Indos and the rest. So the Indos were, in fact, a group that was in between several layers, and that brought about that the Indos had to develop a kind of flexibility. They had to be able to adapt to several situations. And I once read that someone said that the Indos have a chameleonistic trait. Do they say it chameleonistic, like a chameleon that changes color? Yeah? And another thing is that because they were in between, in order to keep their position, they should have an appearance of authority and being self-assured. On the other hand, we had the Indonesian thing that was in our way of behaving, and that was that you never show emotions. Well, you can show anger. Anger is okay. But showing vulnerable emotions was not done. because if you go to someone and asking the person about something that's vulnerable, you may cause harm, or you may the people feel weak. So that was avoided. Beth and I had very long talks together. It was specifically when I was in my 20s and was depressed very often. I would phone her and she would talk to me. She was a talker and I was a listener, in fact. And she was talking about daily things and nothing, in fact. But the effect on me was that my feelings of depression calmed down, and I was thinking what the effect in fact was. I think it's, you could compare it with EMDR, in which you're treated for trauma and you're concentrating on the trauma, and at the same time you have to look at something that is moving in front of you. So what happens is that in fact you're pulled out of the ditch, of the pit that you're in, because of your concentrating on something quite different. That's what happened when Beth was talking to me. So there's some things in which Beth showed the Indo characteristics, you might say, that I want to bring forward. In the first place, there was the adaptability. She was extremely adaptable. When we came to Holland in 1951, we were immediately transported to deep south of Holland, of the Netherlands, I should say. And that was a village, Kerkrade, in the province of Limburg. It's an obsolete place, very small, in the middle of the coal mines, and people talk strange kind of language. It's kind of German, it's kind of Dutch, but also neither of them. And the song in which they speak is quite different. Like when I was in hospital, they would ask me in this voice, "Ben je al geweest?" Which would be in normal Dutch language, "Did you poop already?" But Beb had no problem with adapting. She, soon after we had arrived there, you could hear the Limburg voice in her tone. And she also got a friend within a month that we were there. She took him to our place. We were still living in a hotel. He was a local mine worker. And, well, it was his only visit, because at a certain moment he touched my father's body, which my father didn't like, and my father smashed him to the wall and said that he shouldn't do that. So he disappeared. But also, Beb has had something in her way of behaving that called for attention, apparently, because when she was walking a few times to the center of the village, she would pass the cinema, and the cinema owner would stand in front of the door sometimes, and then he would call her. "Miss, Miss." And when she looked up, he would only say, "Hello, Miss." That was all. So she was very adaptable, but she was also somebody who liked to take the lead. It's not for nothing that she was in scouting in Indonesia already, and she came in scouting in Kerkrade. And well, it was a second nature, in fact. And one example is, for example, that Rob, me, and Beppie were visiting a certain village with Peter and my wife Els, and at a certain time, Peter and my wife went to a restaurant, and we went on shopping. And when we were walking back, Beppie was taking the lead in front of us, and we were following like ducklings to the amusement of Peter and Els. And she was self-assured. She was very certain of the things that she did, and she brought it that way. In fact, and she also brought it very often in the form of an advice. You must do this. You must do that. And there were people who had difficulties with that because they thought it was an advice, but the only thing that Beppie was doing was giving her opinion, and she wouldn't mind if you would just shove it away. And what Beppie and I had in common was that we couldn't talk about emotions. Beppie avoided that consciously. She didn't want to talk about them because it made her feel too vulnerable very often. I went the other direction. I missed feeling emotions, and I was supported in that by my wife, who is emotional and persisting and inquiring. But in the course of time, I found that it's good to show your emotionality, because it is the only way to come in contact with other people, in my opinion. And I found it so wholesome that I wanted to share it with Beppie, but I never succeeded. Because as soon as we had contact, we kind of plugged into the old family constellation, and we didn't talk about emotions. We didn't express emotions. And in fact, what came to mind is that you could compare us with atoms. They're circling around each other, they attract each other, they feel their belongings, but they're not able to really fuse. But on the other hand, there we were being family, so we shared a lot of things. And being of the same family means, in our case, that we can trust each other. Like we can say whatever we like as far as our own mental conditions permit. And one word is enough. And there's a kind of closeness, and there's a feeling of happiness as soon as we see each other. Like when I came here 3 weeks ago, Beppie was so glad, and I felt so glad. And that despite the gap that I described earlier. So, and one of the things that we had in common was also a love of singing. We sang a lot in the family. What came to my mind is a song that kept recurring in my mind. And it's, well, let's sing. Oh, Bep, where is my Bep? When somebody tell me where. I ain't care what you say, I ain't care what you done. Can somebody tell me where's my Bep? Oh, Lord. Oh, Bep, where is my Bep? Can somebody tell me where's my Bep? My Bep, where is she?
Well, that was a good segue because the next thing we get to hear is from Beppie herself. Beppie was known often for singing in choirs and as a soloist. And if our audio-visual crowd is with me, we have queued up a recording from a solo from her time living in Chambly. One side of your song sheet actually includes the words for you to follow along as we listen to the song Comme un soleil. That is amazing, the notes that she hits. I heard that for the very first time just this month. Next, we have Connie Boudens, Beppie's middle daughter.
Number two.
Number 2.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for coming today. I know Beppie would have been really pleased that so many people came out from so many different parts of her life. So most of you probably read the online obituary for Beppie, so I'm just going to add some anecdotes and a little bit of color for those of you who don't know her super well. The main thing that I'll remember about my mom, and other people have already mentioned this, so this is going to be a little bit of repetition, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing at a memorial, because it gives you a sense of what the person was like to various people in their life. So she was really resilient and adaptable, as my uncle said. She moved a lot of times in her life, so my uncle told you about all the times that they moved when they were living in Indonesia. When my parents moved to Canada, it was with 4 young kids, all under the age of 10. And then within Canada, we moved a lot, a few times, Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg, and then finally we wound up, I was there too, in Quebec. And so in Quebec, she also had to adapt to a new language. And each time she moved, she made it a priority to figure out how she was going to make it a home for herself, but also for everyone else in the family. So she would do things like figure out how to navigate the city, how to get around. She'd figure out the public transit system, how you got places by bike, on foot, and by car. And she would also find the resources that we all would need, starting with public libraries. We spent a lot of time as kids at the public library. She would always, get us to take out the maximum number of books, so we'd take them home, and then when they were due, we'd all, pack them all up in these apple boxes, which for some reason I remember these like boxes that apples came in. And, go back to the library, get more ones. Then also she had to figure out where to do the shopping, as everyone does. And most importantly, where to get ingredients for the stuff that she was going to need to cook that was like non-Canadian stuff. So where to get their ingredients she would need for Indonesian cooking, but also where to get Dutch stuff, because that's really important. And if you were to ask my mom, not now, because, anyway, we'll get into that. But if you were to ask her during her life, where in City X can I get Dutch stuff, she would tell you, this is where the Dutch stores are, and this is how you get to them, right? No matter what city you were in. When I moved to Toronto, I would call her up and ask her where stuff was, even though she'd never lived in Toronto. She'd be like, oh yeah, art supplies, you gotta go down to Chinatown. I don't know how she figured this stuff out, because this was before the internet. But I do know that she was heavily reliant, sorry, I've got props. This is one of the ways she would figure things out. This, my friends, is a phone book. For younger people here, you probably don't know what this is, but it's basically got all the people, unless your phone number was unlisted, but only fancy people had that. And these are the yellow pages. These are for businesses, right? So this is how you find out who does what, and it's alphabetical, so blah, blah, blah. Anyways, this was still at her house. I didn't get this from the library. I didn't have to dig this up anyplace. I didn't have to go to the archives. I didn't have to get them from the National Library of Congress or whatever the one in Ottawa is. She actually had this at her house underneath the phone. And I believe it's, this is South Shore of Montreal. If anyone lives there, you want this. But she did also have an Oshawa one, amazing, right? And then the other thing that she really excelled at was making connections, which my sister Jackie talked about. She just knew how to charm people. And she would meet a person in a grocery store lineup, and the next thing you'd know, she'd talk about how she was going to go for coffee with this person. I'm like, what? Right? So one of the things that we were kind of worried about when she moved to Oshawa, as my sister Jackie said, was that she might be lonely, right? She was giving up all her friend network in Chambly to move to a place where she would be closer to her kids, because she knew that she would need support as she got older. And so we were like, how's she going to do this? The woman is in her 80s. Like, she's going to move to a brand new town, and it's Oshawa. Of all places, right? It's Oshawa. And like, she doesn't know anything about this place. But like, before we knew it, she was like, had signed up for classes at the senior center. She really liked the senior center. It was like a really big part of her life. Because she'd take these classes, random classes. Oh, I'm going to take a drumming class. Okay, Mom. I'm going to take a ukulele class. Sure, Mom. But the next thing you knew, she had like these friends in these classes and stuff like that, right? And she was always trying to get us to join the senior center, like, because you can join that when you're like 55 plus. Apparently, very good services there at the Oshawa Senior Center. Check it out. But she also, like, beyond that, she would find like her people, right? So she found this like Indo community that loved Indonesian food, this, you know, great restaurant that they would order from on, was it Thursdays? On Thursdays, right? And they'd all get together and eat and sing songs and stuff like that. And like, how does she do that? Like, within 2 years of moving to Oshawa, my mom had more friends than I do. Probably than I've ever had. I'm short friends, so if any of you want to be like, oh, she looks a little like Beppie, maybe she can take her place, can do it. Call me. I'll give you my phone number. Okay, she was also, and everybody who knows her knows this about her, that she was famously money conscious. So, you know, there were times in her life when she had periods of hardship. You know, my mom and dad didn't have a lot of money when they were first married, and well, most of the time they didn't have a lot of money. So she was like the original person, the poster girl for reuse, and then reuse it again. And the best part about this is the funniest thing about her. I hear another drop. That's the third prop. Sorry, I just bring all the props up here. Okay, so not too long ago, Mom had pulled the last tissue out of a box of tissues, and my partner Dave, who's sitting right over there, wave to everybody, Dave, that's Dave. He went to take it out of her hand, right? Because he's like, oh, the box of tissues is empty, and there was another one right there. And she grabbed onto it with like this grip, like that woman was strong, man. Like she could hold on to stuff. And she grabbed this box like this, and Dave just kind of looks at me like, what's going on? Is she like losing her mind, right? And I was like, well, yes, but also she keeps everything. And he's like, oh, what do you do with an empty Kleenex box? And I was like, she makes it into another box like this. This is the sample. I have 2 of these if anyone needs, and there are like hundreds of them over at Beppie's house. Just stop by. We'll get you a box. Anyway, and I was telling this story to one of my neighbors, and she was like, but it's already a box. And that's like one of the things I'm going to remember about my mom most. It's already a box. Anyway, so this ties into my own thrifting habits, because I'm pretty sure that that's where my thrifting habits come from. I am a legendary, potentially award-winning. If there was an award for thrifting, I would win it every year because I'm so good at it. Everything I'm wearing today, Value Village. Except the shoes. So yeah, if you need, and as I said before, I need friends. I also need thrift shopping friends, so call me. All right, so this is not a story about me. I know it sounds like I'm now talking about me, but I'm not. I am still talking about my mom, because one day I was at Value Village, and they have this wall, in every Value Village is this wall where they put all the stuff that is too small to price individually. And they put it in a bag and stick it up on the wall. And I call those the bags of stuff. The bags of stuff are like where you find the really good stuff at Value Village. So I'm going through the bags of stuff one day, and I see this thing, and I'm like, what could it be, right? And I shake it. I'm like, oh man, there's something in that box, right? It could be anything. It could be gold coins. It could be valuable jewelry. It could be a ticket to paradise or 2 tickets to paradise. I don't know, right? So I bought it, as one does. But it's okay because it was like Seniors Day. Seniors Day is Tuesday, every Tuesday, 55 plus 30% off. And I have coupons too in my car if you need any. So anyway, so I get home, right? I swear to God, this story is not about me. It really is about Mom. You'll see. So I get home and I'm like,
I got to get this thing open to get the valuable stuff out of it, because obviously I'm going to be able to retire and be really rich, right? And I can buy my own tickets to paradise. So I couldn't get it open. And then I did what every smart person does, is I got a knife and I decided to try to pry it open, which didn't work. And then I tried like different ways of opening it, different positions, and finally managed to open it and slice my thumb open at the same time. Tick, 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 stitches, blah, blah, blah. So, and this is where it goes back to mom. So the next time I went to visit my mom, I brought the thing with me, and I was like, this thing tried to kill me, right? Like, I show her my, like, oh, my mommy, I cut my thumb, right? The whole business, right? So she's all like appropriately mom-like and stuff. And so she said, well, what are you going to do with that thing? And I'm going to give it back to Value Village. Like, you get a coupon for a donation. I'm giving it back to them. And she's like, you're going to give it back, but you paid for it. I was like, yeah, but it tried to kill me, Mom. Anyway, she kept it. And she had it at her house, like in this place where anybody could see it. Like every time I went there, I saw this stupid thing. It's coasters, by the way. If anybody needs coasters, no, I'm serious. Like, if anybody wants this, I don't want to ever see it again. They tried to kill me. And then my mom was like, oh, yeah, no problem, you know? She also had a very good sense of humor. So that's another thing about her that's kind of like, she didn't seem sometimes like a humorous person because she was pretty serious. And I want to share an anecdote from just a little while before she passed away. And I think my Uncle Vim was there at the time. She had a lot of problems chewing food, so she would eat a lot of soft food. And one day at dinner, she was chewing on this piece of meat, and she didn't like chew it enough. So she goes to swallow it, and she starts choking, right? And so we're like, oh my god, we just got her out of the hospital, and now she's going to die from choking, right? Like, can you give the Heimlich maneuver to a 92-year-old lady? I don't know. We're all kind of looking at each other, right? But she could still sort of draw breath, so we knew she was like not going to choke. But anyway, so that passes, she got tears in her eyes. We're all like, oh my God, right? Like, and then she sees these chocolates on the table. She's like, right? She goes to grab one. It's so funny, I'm sorry. She goes to grab one and she looks at it. And she's like looking at it and looking at it. She's looking at me, right? She's looking at the other people at the table. And she's like, oh yeah. And she put the whole thing in her mouth. And I was like, don't put the whole thing in your mouth, right? The woman had almost just choked to death. And so she managed to like successfully swallow it part way, and then she pretended she was choking. She's like, and then she starts laughing, and she looks at everyone, and she's like, this family is terrible. It's a true story. Anyway, so she also, as you can see from her displays of art here, was a very creative person. And she taught me one of the most important things about creativity, and that's like to try stuff out. You don't kind of, start off making a beautiful painting and it's all perfect and all this kind of stuff. You have to do like a lot of pencil strokes, a lot of brush strokes, a lot of painting over stuff and then repainting it and stuff like that, right? And she did that in many parts of her life. Notably, as my sister Jackie said, she didn't really like to cook. She kind of did it because she sort of had to. And she was also very thrifty and creative. And when you bring them all together, what do you get? You get some of the legendary desserts my mom used to make for us, where she'd be like, I've got all this stuff, I need to use it, I know where I'm going to use it, in the dessert I'm going to give my family. So we get these wild desserts where it was like stale pound cake, can't throw it out, still good, doesn't have mold. Yogurt, some, random slices of this and that, and some hot milk or something, right? It always tasted pretty good, but I don't know. We did also develop a certain digestive resilience, I think, from some of Mom's recipes. And then one day she was cooking fish, and she's like, I'm going to throw these grapes in there. And she did. It was delicious. But so she also did that, in her other pursuits. She would just sort of see how things went together, grab a few things from here, a few things from there, like, how does this look? How does this look if you juxtapose this with this or put this over that, and that sort of thing. And I think, like, I learned a lot about creativity from that woman, and that's like I think the most sort of
important thing that I learned from her is that when it comes to something, a creative endeavor, you got to just try stuff out, you know? All right, so that's sort of kind of more or less the last thing. I used all my props, right? Yes, I used all my props. She also was very independent, as we've all, I think, discussed. But in the end, she did learn to lean on us a little bit, which I'm very grateful for. In the last, especially in the last couple of months of her life, me and my two sisters, Maggie and Jackie, were with her most of the time. And she did let us help her with all kinds of things, which is kind of seems like it would be onerous, but it's not. And a couple of weeks ago, I saw this little TikTok video. It was Reese Witherspoon talking about something that someone else told her. And it was really meaningful to me, like in the last little bit of my mom's life. What she said was that this friend of hers had told her that he was doing a bunch of stuff that day where he was going to have to wait at the bus stop. He was going to have to go to a meeting. He was going to have to be on time to meet somebody for lunch. A bunch of stuff that he had to do. But then he kind of reframed it and thought, I don't have to do those things. I get to do those things. I get to take the bus. I get to go outside. I get to do the gardening. I get to do the dishes. And with my mom, sometimes she would say, I feel so bad because you guys have to take me to doctor's appointments, and you have to sit with me, and you have to help me eat, and you have to help me get dressed, and all these kinds of things. And I said to her, and I'm so grateful that I saw that little TikTok video, because I said, no, Mom, I don't have to do those things. I get to do those things. And at the end of someone's life like that, when they finally learn that they can trust you, that they can depend on you, it's a gift, So when the next time, and this is coming from me, not from Beppie, the next time you feel like you're obligated to do something, just think, I get to do that. I get to go to work, or I get to cook this meal, or I get to help my friend, right? It just kind of changed a lot of the way that I think about my day. So thanks to Reese Witherspoon. The last thing we're going to do is, we know that Mom loved to sing, and one of the things that she wanted for her funeral was she wanted the three of us, me and my two sisters, to sing. I'm doing the right thing, right? Is this?
Yes, it is.
Okay, just making sure that I'm doing the right segue. So we are going to be accompanied by Mom's friend Wayne, who is a friend that she met in the ukulele class at the Oshawa Senior Center. Check it out, 55 plus. They got lots of classes and all that sort of stuff. If you flip over your song sheet, the words are there, and we invite you to sing along with us. So this is for Mom, her special song that she requested. Excuse me while I take my phone back.
And when Connie says you get to sing along, you have to.
No, you don't have to.
No, seriously.
Okay, you're supposed to.
You have to help us.
Where's your
Oh, I don't have one. She has a ukulele.
Where's your ukulele?
She has like 3 ukuleles.
We're counting on.
Wayne,
We're counting on you,
completely
Wayne.
on you for the.
Yeah, you're it, Wayne.
Oh, here, let me get on the other side.
Should we, yeah, this is good. This is good? This is good. This is good.
We may have to do this more than once.
Yeah, we're not, we're not professionals.
Okay,
We're not even amateurs. Okay.
don't laugh at our musical ability, Tina and Tinica. Seriously, okay. Here we go.
Gonna
Take a sentimental journey. Gonna set my heart at ease. Gonna take a sentimental journey to renew old memories. Got my bag, I got my reservation. Spend each dime I could afford. Like a child in wild anticipation.
decide to roam. Gonna take a sentimental journey, sentimental journey home, sentimental journey home.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Wayne is available for requests later.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, and sorry. You're okay. I'll leave my prompts.
We're leaving.
Thank you, everybody. That basically concludes our celebration of life for Beppie today. So for those here in the room, please join us downstairs at the reception for more anecdotes and stories, and I'll share all the advice that Beppie gave me through the time that I've known her. There was no shortage. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Let's go. It's food, people. You know what Beppie said about that.
What's that?
I was so nervous.
Oh, were you? Didn't see you.
Sometimes my wife Sarah is going, "Mike, you're going to lose your voice."
Oh no.
I was just going, I wanted it to be perfect, and yet I couldn't have it.
Yeah,
and
but
yet
it's-
when I'm playing, I just have so much fun.
It's better if it's.
home.